We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam pledges to stamp out violence if it continues.
Pagasa said Tropical Storm Jenny may make landfall in Central Luzon either Tuesday night or early Wednesday.
An Oklahoma judge orders U.S. healthcare giant Johnson & Johnson to pay $572 million in damages for its role in fostering the state's opioid addiction crisis.
And its second time lucky as an unmanned spacecraft carrying Russia's first humanoid robot into orbit successfully docks at the International Space Station following a failed attempt at the weekend.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Hong Kong's embattled leader Carrie Lam said the authorities will stamp out any continuing violence by pro-democracy protesters. Take a look.
Starting a dialogue doesn't mean that we will condone violence. If violence continues, the only thing that we should do is to stamp out that violence through law enforcement actions. Because if the bill was the cause of all these disruptions, that has been stopped over 2 months ago. If we continue to tolerate, accommodate, and accept demands because of those protests, that would be a very inappropriate and acceptable response from the government. And I wouldn't say that my government has lost control. Day in, day out, we are not only supporting the law enforcement bodies, we are also acting responsibly to deal with other issues.
Mrs. Lam said protesters over the weekend had used weapons with the risk of lethal injury to attack police officers. She also said the protesters brazenly acted against the law and caused fear among the public, while police used the minimum level of police force in accordance with the force's guidelines. Police said they detained 86 people over the weekend, including a 12-year-old child, for offenses including unlawful assembly, possession of offensive weapons, and assaulting police officers. The weekend protests, which followed a few days of relative calm, saw police use water cannon for the first time on Sunday, along with tear gas and beatings as they fought running battles with protesters who threw bricks and petrol bombs. 6 officers drew their pistols and 1 officer fired a warning shot into the air during a heated confrontation after the protest. In response to questions on whether the government will resort to declaring a state of emergency in view of the recent chaos, Mrs. Lam said the government will use existing means in the legal framework to put a stop to violence and chaos. A state of emergency would pave the way for the Hong Kong government to seek help from the Chinese army to deal with unrest.
Police have banned a planned protest at Cathay Pacific's offices outside Hong Kong International Airport on Wednesday. The group wanted to hold a rally against the airline's decision last week to fire the head of a cabin crew association. Cathay and earlier warned employees not to join the rally, which was a response to the abrupt dismissal of Rebecca See Onna, the head of the Hong Kong Dragon Airlines Flights Attendants Association. The airline has neither confirmed nor denied See's allegation that she was fired over a Facebook post. The ban was made on the grounds of public safety and public order, and police said the airport authority, which had its injunction against protests extended last week, had expressed its objections to the force.
Meanwhile, Beijing voiced strong dissatisfaction with a joint statement issued by the G7 leaders, who backed Hong Kong's autonomy and called for calm after months of civil unrest. Take a look. G7 leaders meeting in France on Monday backed Hong Kong's autonomy as laid out in a 1984 agreement between Britain and China and called for calm in the protest-hit city. But Beijing has accused foreign governments of interfering over Hong Kong, and Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said the G7 was meddling and harboring evil intentions.
Enfin, nous avons échangé sur Hong Kong. Sur ce point, nous avons acté aussi d'un message très clair. Le G7 réaffirme l'existence et l'importance de la déclaration sino-britannique de 1984 sur Hong Kong et appelle à éviter les violences. Et sur ce point, il était aussi important, tout particulièrement compte tenu aussi des accords qui ont été signés historiquement entre la Grande-Bretagne et la Chine, que ce qui a été acté entre ces deux puissances soit pleinement respecté et que la situation soit véritablement maintenue sous contrôle.
我们对七国集团峰会领导人声明对香港事务说三道四、指手画脚表示强烈不满和坚决反对。我们多次强调，香港事务纯属中国内政，任何外国政府、组织和个人无权干预。香港的法治、社会秩序、经济民生和国际形象都受到了严重冲击。没有人比包括香港市民在内的中国人民更关心香港的繁荣稳定。我们自己的事情我们会处理好，请七国集团成员不要再居心叵测、多管闲事儿、图谋不轨。
Hong Kong has been racked by more than 2 months of protests over an attempt by its Beijing-backed government to pass an extradition bill, which opponents saw as a huge dent in the city's autonomy. It has since morphed into a wider call for greater democratic freedoms. Beijing has previously accused former colonial power Britain of interfering in the semi-autonomous Chinese territory, which was handed over to China in 1997. So far, Beijing has not intervened over unrest in the semi-autonomous city, despite ramping up the rhetoric against demonstrators and mounting fears that they may act militarily to quell the violence.
An Australian pro-democracy academic held for 7 months in China has been formally arrested for spying. Foreign Minister Marise Payne said Tuesday as she demanded Beijing uphold basic standards of justice. Payne said she was very concerned that Chinese-born Yang Hengjun, a former official turned author, had been arrested on suspicion of espionage. Yang had been detained after returning to China from the United States in January. Now in his 50s, he had used popular blog and social media posts to criticize Beijing's authoritarian government. He has a following of more than 125,000 on Twitter alone. After months without access to his lawyer or family, Yang now faces trial on charges that could bring a lengthy prison sentence. China has allowed Australian consular officials to visit him, but he has been denied access to his family and lawyers. He is expected to be moved to a state prison now, his supporters said. On Tuesday, Australia reiterated its expectations that he would be treated in accordance with international human rights law. Beijing has not provided any comment on Mr. Yang's detention.
In other news, Brazil rejected aid from the G7 countries to fight wildfires in the Amazon, with the top official telling French President Emmanuel Macron to take care of his home and his colonies. Take a look. Commenting on the G7 offer of aid, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's chief of staff, Onyx Lorenzoni, told the Globo News website, "Thanks, but maybe those resources are more relevant to reforest Europe." Macron cannot even avoid a predictable fire in a church that is part of the world's heritage, and he wants to give us lessons for our country, Mr. Lorenzoni added, in a reference to the fire that hit Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris in April. Nearly 80,000 forest fires have broken out in Brazil since the beginning of the year, just over half of them in the massive Amazon basin that regulates part of Earth's carbon cycle and climate. G7 countries made the 20 million euros aid offered to fight the blazes at the Biarritz summit hosted by Macron, who insisted they should be discussed as a top priority. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, a climate change skeptic, has faced criticism over his delayed response to the fires at home, and thousands have taken to the streets in Brazil in recent days to denounce the destruction. The blazes have also fueled a diplomatic spat between Bolsonaro and Macron, who have locked horns repeatedly over the past weekend. The French president has threatened to block a huge new trade deal between the European Union and Latin America unless his Brazilian counterpart takes serious steps to protect the fast shrinking forest from logging and mining. Bolsonaro reacted by blasting Macron for having a colonialist mentality, and days later endorsed vicious personal comments about the French president's wife posted online, driving their relationship to a new low. In another sign of tension, Bolsonaro skipped a meeting last month with visiting French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, saying that he had instead gone to the hairdresser.
President Hassan Rouhani Tuesday told the United States to take the first step by lifting all sanctions against Iran, a day after U.S. President Donald Trump said he was open to meeting. The step is to retreat from sanctions. You must retreat from all illegal, unjust, and wrong sanctions against the nation of Iran, Rouhani said in a speech aired live on state television. On Monday, President Trump said he had good feelings about the prospect of a new nuclear deal with Iran.
I have to say the JCPOA was a bad deal. Should not have been entered into. A lot of things could have happened that would have been much different. They're allowed to test ballistic missiles. You're not allowed to go to various sites to check. And some of those sites are the most obvious sites for the creation or the making of nuclear weapons. And those things have to be changed, and other things have to be changed. And I will tell you, I have very good feelings about it. I think that we're going to do something. It may not be immediately, but I think ultimately we're going to do something. As I said, Iran is a much different country than it was 2.5 years ago. And we can get that back. And it's a country with tremendous potential.
At Monday's press conference, Mr. Trump said that for any new deal, he was looking for no nuclear weapons, no ballistic missiles.
I think that we're going to
And I think there's been a true change. This morning, President Rouhani showed himself to be open to this meeting happening. And President Trump has been saying for weeks that he's being demanding, he's being tough, he's put forward sanctions, but I'm ready to have a meeting to make a deal. And I think that we're making progress. I want this meeting to happen, and I want there to be an agreement between the United States and Iran. And France will play the role it is meant to play together with the United Kingdom, with Germany, and all of the other signatory powers and the permanent members of the Security Council.
Iran is a country that is not the same country that it was 2.5 years ago when I came into office. Iran was the #1 state of terror throughout the world. There were 18 sites of confliction in my first week when I spoke with the folks at the Pentagon, including lots of generals and lots of other military experts. 18 sites of confliction, meaning 18 sites of big problems. Every one of them was backed by Iran, or in some cases actually using Iranian soldiers, but at a minimum Iranian wealth, much of it given in the ridiculous deal where they were given $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash and they use that money for some bad purposes. With that being said, I think that Iran is a country of tremendous potential. We're not looking for leadership change. We're not looking for that kind of change. This country has been through that many times before. That doesn't work. We're looking for no nuclear weapons, no ballistic missiles, and a longer period of time. Very simple. We can have it done in a very short period of time. And I really believe that Iran can be a great nation. I'd like to see that happen.
In other news, Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir kicks off his official visit to Vietnam by meeting his Vietnamese counterpart, Nguyen Xuan Phuc. They also agreed to work closely with other ASEAN members to ensure peace, stability, safety, and freedom of navigation and overflight in the disputed areas in the South China Sea. Let's listen in.
One area that we need to work together is to point out that the world is experiencing a disregard for international laws, and many countries are affected because the big powers take the law into their own hands and they do things which are contrary to their stand on international management of international relations. We also talk on overlapping claims with regard to the continental shelf, and we believe that such disputes should be settled in a peaceful manner through negotiation, through arbitration, and possibly through a court of law.
Meanwhile, the Vietnamese Prime Minister said it is important to resolve disputes by peaceful means in accordance to international laws and the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in the disputed waters. On July 31, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said ASEAN and Beijing had completed the first reading of the single draft negotiating text for COC. Wang, who was in Bangkok for the annual ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, said it was an important progress in COC talks, which marked a critical step towards the goal of concluding the consultations within 3 years. The doc of parties in the South China Sea, signed by China and ASEAN in 2002, outlined the important principles in the management of the disputes in the South China Sea.
We agree to further boost trade.
Iglesia Ni Cristo continues its mission to help areas around the world that are struggling. This time, they made a stop in Brisbane, Australia, to help OFW, or overseas Filipino workers there. Our Eagle News correspondent, Raylene Rose Javier, is at the scene.
Members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, continues to reach out to society in another milestone event, the Aid to Humanity, being held today in Metro Brisbane, Australia.
More than 10% of overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, have headed to Australia since 2017, and the number has been increasing throughout the years. Add that to the growing number of Filipinos who are in student visas opting to study in Australia as their way of finding a greater pathway. Realizing the challenges of the OFWs and the Filipino students in adjusting and transitioning to the Australian life and culture, the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, organized the Aid to Humanity event to reach out to them and provide them with support and assistance. A special program has been prepared for the OFWs, Filipino students and guests that is being held at the Brisbane Chapel compound. Musical performances were rendered for guests to be entertained. They were also catered with free food and goodie bags to celebrate fellowship, friendship, and the spirit of the Filipino community to make them feel at home.
We are doing this because this is in accordance with the command of our Lord God written in the Bible, to help our fellow men, to those who are in need, and most especially not just we are helping them through this kind of things that they need, but most especially we are helping them with their spiritual needs. That's why we also conducted our evangelical mission a while ago. all of the brethren participated well, and also all of the guests, our visitors, are very happy because they can feel that there are those organizations and people who are caring for them, who are thinking about them, thinking of ways how to help them.
Indeed, the spirit of Filipino hospitality continues to live on wherever we are in the world. Having said that, the Iglesia Ni Cristo or Church of Christ is still unstoppable in providing aid to humanity, as we have witnessed yet again another successful event that touched the heart of every Filipino around the globe.
Reporting from Brisbane, Australia, this is Raylene Rose Javier, and I am 1 with 25.
The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Ako ang taglaw sa gitna ng dilim. Ako ang mata sa sahing papawid. Ako ang dilat sa tuwing ang bayan ko'y tulog ng mahimbing. Ang aming buhay handang ialay para sa bayan. Kayo'y handang maglingkuran.
Join us in celebrating the 72nd anniversary of the Philippine Air Force.
And today I'm here at the Japanese Gardens in Portland, Oregon. If you want to experience greenery and unique landscaping, as well as peace, tranquility, tune in to EBC Digital Nest. I'm Rio Marikio and I'm 1 with 25.
A verdict that could set the stage for new lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies. An Oklahoma judge on Monday ordered U.S. healthcare giant Johnson & Johnson to pay $572 million in damages for its role in fostering the state's opioid addiction crisis. In the first civil trial of a drug maker over an epidemic that has caused hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths, Judge Thad Brockman said prosecutors had demonstrated that JJ contributed to a public nuisance in its deceptive promotion of highly addictive prescription painkillers. Johnson & Johnson was the first pharmaceutical company tried over the U.S. opioid crisis, which fueled over 70,000 overdose deaths in 2017 alone. JJ argued that the law was being inappropriately applied and that its products had a very small role in the addiction epidemic in Oklahoma and nationally. Judge Bachman said JJ had promoted its drugs by telling doctors and patients that pain was not being treated enough and that there was a low risk of abuse and a low danger in the drugs themselves.
The opioid crisis is an imminent danger and menace to Oklahomans. My judgment includes findings of fact and conclusions of law that the state met its burden, that the defendants, Janssen and Johnson & Johnson's misleading marketing and promotion of opioids created a nuisance at Oklahomans. Specifically, defendants caused an opioid crisis that is evidenced by increased rates of addiction, overdose deaths, and neonatal abstinence syndrome. The opioid crisis has ravaged the state of Oklahoma. It must be abated immediately. For this reason, I am entering an abatement plan that consists of costs totaling $572,102,028 to immediately remediate the nuisance.
The company used pseudoscience and misleading information that downplayed the risks of opioids, leading to the worst man-made public nuisance our state and this country has ever seen, the opioid crisis. We have proven that Johnson & Johnson built its billion-dollar brand out of greed and on the backs of pain and suffering of innocent people.
I feel like my boy's looking down, and it's a pretty tough deal. But I think my son and Austin are celebrating today. And we got to get help to these other kids. So I'm very grateful for the court for what he did. And depends on what these other companies do now. I think they'll appeal this thing and fight till hell freezes over. But my boy and Austin are fighters, and we are too.
We are disappointed and disagree with the judge's decision. We believe that it is flawed. We have sympathy for all who suffer from substance abuse. But Johnson & Johnson did not cause the opioid abuse crisis here in Oklahoma or anywhere in this country. We do not believe that the facts or the law supports the decision today. We have many strong grounds for appeal, and we intend to pursue those vigorously. The decision violates well-established constitutional principles, including due process of law. And at bottom, the decision is fundamentally unfair in that it finds Johnson & Johnson responsible for the entirety of the opioid abuse crisis and the greater drug problems in this state, while there was no evidence at trial to support that finding.
Oklahoma ruling is monumental because it could set a precedent for similar cases and result in more big payouts. Around 1,900 cases are pending just in Ohio against opioid manufacturers, including Johnson & Johnson and Purdue Pharma. Nationally, there are more than 2,300 pending cases accusing manufacturers of downplaying the risks of opioids and failing to detect and halt suspicious orders. According to the CDC, 130 Americans die every day because of an opioid overdose. The highly addictive painkillers were involved in nearly 400,000 deaths from 1999 to 2017.
U.S. retailer Costco was forced to cut short the opening day of its inaugural mainland China outlet over safety worries after huge crowds of bargain hunters swamped the store in suburban Shanghai. Take a look. The massive warehouse outlet issued a notice to users of its official app in the early afternoon saying that it would no longer allow more customers through the doors, citing an overcrowding situation inside the store and traffic chaos in surrounding areas. Analysts have warned Costco's model may struggle in a market that has been tough on foreign food retailers, but shoppers descended on the outlet in droves as soon as the doors opened, prompting staff to move them into the store in phased groups to maintain order. But they continue to flow in, leading to shopping cart gridlock throughout the store, especially in more popular areas such as the food section, where people scramble to get their hands on meat and other produce. Elsewhere, shoppers pushed and shoved for access to the freshly cooked rotisserie chickens as staff pleaded with buyers to form a line. Outside, motorists complained on social media about 3-hour waits to get into the store's parking lot, while others stood for lengthy periods in 36-degree or 97 degrees Fahrenheit heat outside the store, hoping to get in. but there were no immediate reports of any injuries or scuffles. The shopping frenzy could be a result of the heavily discounted membership fees Costco offered to promote its opening. It costs 299 yuan or $41 annual fee to be a Gold Star member in China's Costco. That's $19 less than the Costco's membership fee for the same category in the United States.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he is marginally more optimistic on the chances of clinching a deal for Britain's exit from the EU after talks at the G7 this weekend, but acknowledges it will be difficult. The EU has so far rejected negotiating a new deal, which was approved by the government under Johnson's predecessor Theresa May, but repeatedly rejected by the British Parliament.
I am marginally more optimistic, but remember that all statistical estimates that I give about the chances of a deal, whether they're expressed in odds of millions to one or getting closer or hotter or colder or whatever, they all depend exclusively on the willingness of our friends and partners to compromise on that crucial point and to get rid of the backstop and the current withdrawal agreement. First of all, I would like to
addressing concerns, he is prepared to ignore Parliament so that Britain leaves the EU on October 31. Johnson said British people were tired of reading about Brexit on the front pages of their newspapers.
People have just about had enough of this conversation, and I think they're yearning for a moment when Brexit comes off the front pages, but that can only happen when we come out of the EU on October the 31st. And that is what I really call on all my fellow MPs to deliver, and I hope and believe that they will.
Johnson also reaffirmed that if Britain left the EU without a deal, it would not pay all of the £39 billion, or that's $47 billion and 43 billion euros divorce bill that has already been negotiated. He did not specify how much, if any, would be paid. The EU insists Britain must pay the bill even if it crashes out of the bloc without a deal.
Being a pro gamer in Myanmar is not always easy, thanks to power cuts and shaky infrastructure, but the country's esports community is seeing a growing surge of interest as youths turn to mobile-only video games. Take a look.
PC နဲ့ mobile နဲ့ကြာ mobile ကတိတ်ပြီးခက်ခဲအများကြီးမရှိဘူးဗျာကို online နဲ့ကိုဟို pay တွေပါလေဒါကြီးမကုန်အဲ့တော့ဆော့ရတာပို့လွယ်တယ် ADH ဒီမှာဒီကိန်းလေးကတော့ပေါက်လို့ပါကျေးဇူးပါတယ်ဒီစမှာလက်ပေါ်တိုင်းနဲ့အားပါရပုံပြပေးပါဦးဗျဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်ဒီနေ့ပြန်မှာဒီကောင်ဒီပန်း
An unmanned spacecraft carrying Russia's first humanoid robot to be sent into orbit successfully docked at the International Space Station on Tuesday following a failed attempt over the weekend, Moscow Space Agency said. The life-size robot, named Fedor, short for Final Experimental Demonstration Object Research, copies human movements, allowing it to help carry out tasks remotely. The craft blasted off Thursday from a Russian spaceport in southern Kazakhstan and is due to stay on the ISS, or International Space Station, until September 7, learning to assist astronauts there. Soyuz ships are normally manned on such trips, but this time no humans were traveling in order to test a new emergency rescue system. Roscosmos said the MS-14 was carrying 670 kilograms of dry cargo, including scientific and medical equipment, components for the life support system, as well as containers with food, medicines, and personal hygiene products for crew members. Fedor is not the first robot to go into space. In 2011, NASA set up Robonaut 2, a humanoid developed with General Motors that had a similar aim of working in high-risk environments. It was flown back to Earth in 2018 after experiencing technical problems. In 2013, Japan set up a small robot called Kirobo along with the ISS's first Japanese space commander. Developed with Toyota, it was able to hold conversations, albeit only in Japanese. The International Space Station has been orbiting Earth at about 28,000 kilometers per hour, or that's 17,000 miles per hour, since 1998.
Confirmed. Docking probe on the forward end of the Soyuz is now in the process of retracting. And this now is the current configuration.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset.
In Focus, Monday to Friday, 2 to 2:30 p.m.
People all over the world are calling for a shift towards a greener, cleaner future, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Monday, stressing that, quote, "We have the tools to address the climate emergency, but we need more political will." Take a look. This was the urgent message delivered on Twitter from Biarritz, France, where the UN chief has been meeting for the past 2 days with G7 leaders to mobilize action ahead of his Climate Action Summit next month in New York. Now, speaking to reporters, Mr. Guterres also said the UN summit and the need for concrete action come against the backdrop of a dramatic climate emergency, with the UN World Meteorological Organization reporting that 2015 to 2019 are on track to be the 5 hottest years ever recorded.
Tropical storm Jenny may make landfall in central Luzon either Tuesday night or early Wednesday, the Weather Bureau said. In a press briefing Tuesday afternoon, Weather specialist Loredine de la Cruz said Jenny may make landfall in central Luzon, particularly in Aurora province, between 9 p.m. tonight to 1 a.m. Wednesday. Watch this.
Sa ating latest analysis ay namataan ho natin ang sentro ng bagyong si Jenny sa layong 290 kilometers. Silangan ho yan ng Infanta, Quezon. Ibig sabihin, yung bagyo po nito ay nasa karagatan pa, nasa dagat pa ho, at hindi pa po ito naglalandfall. Ini-expect natin maglalandfall ito dito sa Central Luzon, particularly ho, ini-expect natin sa Aurora province between 9 p.m. to tonight at 1 a.m. tomorrow early morning. Ibig sabihin, ngayong gabi na ho yan, maglalandfall itong bagyo dito at ina-expect natin makaka-apekto sa malaking bahagi ng Northern Luzon at Central Luzon. Sa kasalukuyan, ang kanyang category ay tropical storm dahil taglay pa rin ito ang lakas na 65 kilometers per hour near the center at pagbugso po na 80 kilometers per hour. Bahagya po siyang nag-intensify from tropical depression to tropical storm kanina ho yan ng hapon. At sa kasalukuyan ng kanyang movement ay pakanluran, hilagang kanluran sa bilis na 35 kilometers per hour. Kung mapapansin po natin, medyo bumilso ang takbo nito ni Jenny. Although sa ngayon, nananatiling ang ating estimate time ay tonight ang landfall niya and tomorrow early morning. Sa mapapansin ho natin dito sa satellite image natin, ito pong makakapal na kaulapan ay nararanasan na ho at nakikita na ho natin sa malaking bahagi ng Northern Luzon. Ang ibig sabihin po niyan, ngayon pa lamang, hindi pa man naglalandfall itong bagyo, nakakaranas na ho ng malalakas na mga pag-ulan, maging mga gusty winds ang ilang bahagi ng Northern Luzon, Cagayan Valley Region, Cordillera, maging sa Central Luzon ho yan. At bukod dyan, itong southwest monsoon, dahil nga sa presence nitong weather disturbance na ito, nai-enhance pa lalo at nagkukos pa yan ng mga pag-ulan dito sa Southern Luzon, maging dito sa Kabisayaan. Kaya kahit yung buong Visayas, maulap din ho today at may mga inaasahang mga pag-ulan. Sa latest po na ipinalabas ng Pag-asa na forecast track, ito nga po alas 2 kanina ay nasa eastern part ho o silang bahagi pa ng Central Luzon ang mata ng bagyo at inaasahan natin unti-unti itong magpapahilagang kanluran yung kanyang direksyon and then eventually will make landfall over Aurora tonight and it will cross over this part of the landmass ng Luzon dito po sa Central Luzon at sa ilang bahagi ng Northern Luzon before exiting the landmass tomorrow morning ho yan. At kung hindi po magbago ang direksyon niya at bilis ng takbo, inaasahan natin na by Thursday morning, nasa labas na po ng ating area of responsibility si Bagyong Jenny. So that's Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning ho yan. Kaugnay dito, ang Tropical Cyclone Warning Signal o Wind Signal number 2 ay itinaas na ho ngayon sa 6 na lalawigan. Yun ho yung Isabela, Quirino, Aurora, Nueva Vizcaya, Ifugao at maging sa Mount Province. Ito yung areas na naka-yellow shade po. So again, nakataas na po ang signal number 2 dahil nakikita natin na hagip na po ito ng diametro at ini-expect na natin that within the next 18 hours ay makaka-apekto na nga ho yung 60 to 100 km per hour na bilis ng hangin. Wherein, in this case, si Jenny, dahil 65 kilometers per hour yung nakikita natin na bilis o maximum sustained winds niya dito sa sentro, ibig sabihin, ang maximum din na pwedeng maranasan ng ating mga kababayan dito na itong mga lugar na dadaanan ay pwede pong umabot hanggang sa 65 kilometers per hour. Mapaminsala na ho yun at hindi po tayo pwedeng maging kampante. Samantala, yung signal number 1 naman, madaming lalawigan ho nakataas ng signal number 1 at isa-isahin ho natin. Yun yung kay Cagayan, Apayao, Abra, Kalinga, Benguet, Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, Tarlac, Zambales, Bataan, Pampanga, Bulacan. Dito sa Metro Manila, signal number 1 pa rin ho tayo. Rizal, northern portion of Quezon, including Polillo Islands and the Labat Islands. Sa Cavite, Laguna, Camarines Norte, northeastern portion of Camarines Sur, maging sa Catanduanes. Ayan. Ang gale warning natin ay tinaas din natin ngayon sa Batanes. Ibig sabihin, yung mga maliliit na sasakyang pandagat ay hindi po muna papayagan ng Coast Guard na pumalaot dahil nga sa inaasahang maalon hanggang sa napakaalong karagatan ho dahil sa presence nitong si Bagyong Jenny. Ulitin ko pa, yung mga lalawigan, Isabela, Quirino, Aurora, Nueva Vizcaya, Ifugao, Mount Province, signal number 2, and the rest of Northern Luzon and Central Luzon, Metro Manila, maging dito sa Calabarzon except Batangas, so ay nakataas ang ating signal number 1 at yung northern tip ho ng Bicol region. Babalikan lang ho natin yung ating latest satellite capture. Ito pong medyo mataas ho yung susceptibility nitong sa flash floods and landslides ng Northern Luzon, particularly yung Cagayan, Cordillera Administrative Region at maging sa Ilocos Region. Dito naman sa Metro Manila, sa ngayon, wala ho tayong nararanasang gaanong pagulan, pero mamayang gabi, posible po ang light to moderate rain sa atin. Gayon din sa Southern Luzon at maging sa Western Visayas. Yung Mindanao, yun ho yung magandang panahon ngayon at wala silang inaasahang malawakang pagulan apart from localized thunderstorms. Expected na exit ni Jenny sa ating par ay Thursday pa ho yan. At sa ngayon, yung ilang lalawigan pa ng Ilocos Region, posible pa pong itaas ang signal number 2 dyan sa mga susunod na oras dahil syempre habang lumalapit ang sentro ng bagyo, ay posibleng itaas ang signal dito sa La Union, Benguet in the next few hours. Yan ang latest mula dito sa Pag-asa. Magandang araw ho.
Tropical storm Dorian intensified Monday as it approached the Caribbean on a track that will take it near Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic by midweek, possibly at hurricane strength, according to U.S. forecasters. Although the storm was moving toward Cuba and Florida, forecasters said it could lose strength as it passes over mountainous terrain on Hispaniola, the Caribbean island shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The system was packing near 60 miles per hour or 95 kilometer per hour winds and was expected to strengthen over the next few days. Dorian could be near hurricane strength when it passes through the northern Windward Islands on Tuesday and is expected to be a hurricane when it moves near Puerto Rico and eastern Hispaniola, the Miami-based National Hurricane Center said. The warning came with Puerto Rico still recovering almost exactly 2 years after Hurricane Maria wreaked havoc, disrupting the island's entire ecosystem and destroying its infrastructure. The NHC said the storm was expected to pass in the vicinity of the islands on Wednesday and reach the eastern side of Hispaniola later that night. A hurricane watch was in effect for the islands of St. Lucia and tropical storm warnings were posted for Barbados, Martinique, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Streets of Madrid have been turned into rivers as flash flooding and hail inundated Spain's capital. Take a look. These videos were taken by Randall Gates and Augusto Cardi and posted on Twitter. Road and metro traffic in Madrid and neighboring areas was disrupted on Tuesday after flooding the previous night transformed streets into torrents, authorities said. In Arganda del Rey, near the Spanish capital, footage on local media showed torrents of mud dragging cars away and mounds of hailstones forming on the streets. No one was hurt and the interventions were relatively minor for a storm of this magnitude. Removing branches from roads, floods in garages, basements or commercial premises, a spokesman for emergency services told AFP. Firefighters in the region were called out 152 times on Monday. Parts of 4 highways surrounding the Spanish capital were blocked off on Monday evening, as were 5 metro lines where some stations were flooded. On Tuesday morning, Traffic on some highways was still disrupted as several lanes were still closed while part of one underground line was cut off around Arganda del Rey.
Living in a big city can be like existing in a concrete jungle. Eagle News correspondent Karina Buluran tells us about a project in Edmonton that mitigates all that cement and asphalt on and renews the urban forest. Take a look.
It's called Root for Trees, and the goal is to increase tree planting in the city of Edmonton. The program was launched in 2013. With the help of businesses, individuals, and community groups, it is hoped an additional 16,000 trees can be added every year. People are provided with seedlings and directed to a planting location. The city even provides the shovels and a watering jug to water all of the seedlings after planting. Catherine Falk is a community greening coordinator with the city. Falk says today's planting event in this River Valley Park is a special one.
So today's planting is really unique. Root for Trees actually has many plantings throughout the season, and each public event that we have, we usually pick a different type of educational information that we'd like to share. And today's information is some of the native trees and shrubs that we have in and around Edmonton that are edible or produce a berry or a nut. And so this event is called the Food Forest, and so we're working with a lot of native shrubs that produce a fruit-bearing product.
Some examples of food-producing plants are gooseberries, pine cherries, and cranberries. Falk says individual volunteers and community groups do the planting. One of the organizations taking part today is the Church of Christ.
They are a church group that do this as a part of their community services. So they planted with us last year as a public, as just a guided event, and this year they've come to join us with in a public event. So it's been a great opportunity for us to have that rejuvenation.
A week earlier, several church members held a cleanup at another city park. Members picked up several bags of litter and garbage. Well, living in the city has its advantages. Concrete streets make a person long for a bit of nature. Programs like this and the efforts of community groups such as the Church of Christ help make our city a little more livable. In Edmonton, Karina Buluran, Eagle News. I'm one with 25.
London's landmark Big Ben is undergoing vital repair works to keep it in tip-top condition. Love and Season reports.
If you're thinking of visiting London, some of the attractions you may be planning to see are the world-famous Elizabeth Tower and the Great Clock, also known to many as Big Ben. It sits above the Houses of Parliament and is one of the finest and most beautiful landmarks in London. But while Big Ben may be iconic, it's also tired and needs a makeover. Ticking away for more than 150 years, it is not surprising that the Great Clock is starting to show problems. In the tower's masonry, you can see cracks, leaks, erosion, and rusty iron roof. Clearly, the clock has seen better days.
Difficult to imagine London without the Big Ben, exactly. But you have to accept.
As a result, repair works on London's Big Ben clock tower has now commenced under a 3-year restoration project. A lot of the 312 pieces of pot opal glass that make up the intricate clock face have to be replaced. Set to cost £29 million or $42 million, this massive project aims to address a number of issues.
All buildings wear, all buildings decay, and basically what we're doing is fighting off the decay so that we can hand this on to the next generation in good condition.
You may be wondering, how does this affect the visitors?
We don't mind because probably the building is so old that it needs maintenance and repairs, so we have no problem with that.
During this time, we won't hear the bells chiming for months, but only on special occasions like New Year's Eve. The tower and the clock will be partially covered with scaffolding, so if you're coming to the city, you will have to make do with a boarded up Big Ben in the background. But then again, Don't let this put you off from visiting London. It is, after all, a city that will always be rich in culture, history, and landmarks. Reporting from London's iconic Big Ben, I'm Love Ann Season, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Love.
Thank you, Love. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Alma Angeles, and we're one with 25.